Not everyone.
Not everyone.
Not everyone can do what they want.
The disabled were objects of shame, fear, pity, and ridicule. They were left out, stared at, made fun of, and some even physically abused. The disabled were pretty much worthless to society. Until the late 1900s, when families throughout the USA started to challenge the exclusion of their disabled children or child. There was negotiating, protests, lawsuits, and doing jail time for fighting for their beliefs. In 1990, the Americans with Disabilities Act, also known as ADA, came into effect. This movement assures equal opportunities and equal rights for people with disabilities. The goals and demands of the movement are accessibility and safety in transportation, architecture, and the physical environment, equal opportunities in independent living, employment, education, housing, freedom from abuse and neglect, violations of patients' rights. The focus is mainly on self-determination and an individual's ability to live independently. A noticeable change has been made in transportation. Most public buildings with more than one floor have an elevator. More and more public buildings are installing automatic doors and wheelchair ramps.
My name is Doug Pomerlo. I work with American Ramp Systems. We're a franchise out of Boston. We're the local chapter here in Minneapolis.
What area of the Americans with Disabilities Act do you deal with?
Well, we deal with mobility challenges, so realistically anybody within that requirement of needing to have better access in and out of homes is what we primarily deal with. So it's a large spectrum. It can be people actually within that act or just normal people with okay mobility issues, but they're starting to struggle with stairs.
How does your job relate to accessibility?
Like I mentioned earlier, we provide modular ramp systems on a rental or purchase basis. So a lot of times it's people who have maybe been in a tragic accident, they're non-weight bearing when they get released from the hospital, but obviously they have a wheelchair with steps to get into the house. Others are just people who are aging or having issues, they want to be able to stay at home, but elevations are one of the biggest challenges, so we kind of cover a very broad spectrum.
Where do you install your ramps, commercial or residential?
We probably do 80% residential, private homes. We'll do some in group homes. We're definitely available for the larger spectrum of commercial. That's kind of something we're growing into. We're about a 15-year-old company right now, but we do have what we call 48-inch wide, what we call double traffic, in and out traffic size ramps. We do have one down at the Cathedral in Minneapolis right now.
On average, how many ramps do you install in a week?
That really varies. We probably do, I'd say on average, 3 to 6 evaluations in a day. And then sometimes those take a long time to turn around because either the patient hasn't improved at the level or the speed they thought they would. Sometimes it's an insurance issue and the monies haven't been approved. But probably if you averaged over a week, I'd say 6 to 7. Maybe a week we put in. Some days we put in 3, some days we don't put in any, so it's kind of all over the board.
And what are the requirements for your ramps?
When we put a ramp in, we assess the entire spectrum of the needs of the client. The American Disability Act will require that you have 1 foot of ramp for every 12 inches, or 1 inch of elevation. It's called a 1 to 12 slope. So if you're doing anything in a commercial environment or where you can't specifically determine who will be using that ramp, you have to go with a 1 to 12 slope minimum. If you were to build a ramp, if you take out a building code, which we're not required to do because we have a durable medical equipment product, you would absolutely have to follow 1 to 12. Commercial sometimes will require 1 to 20, which obviously means a longer ramp, less slope, easier for people to maintain. But American Disability feels 1 to 12, an average person, average weight, average ability, could, utilizing the lower rail system on our ramp, could help themselves with the manual chair. If somebody's going to be assisted, then we could go with what we call a 1 to 9. It's a little bit shorter ramp, it's a little bit steeper, but it saves them some money. So we really evaluate the whole process. Sometimes it's just grandma who can't walk the stairs very good, she doesn't have handrails, and we can go steeper than that. If you're using a power device, you can actually go half the slope. But if you're truly following ADA, if that's the requirements you want, then it would be a 1 to 12.
And if the disability rights movement had not occurred, how do you think America would be different?
Well, it certainly serves the people with mobility challenges. That's kind of one of their beating boards, I guess, to speak, to try to help them out. We have an awful lot of people around, even in our locale area, that are inside. They're either just elderly, they possibly have issues with waiting for a prosthetic. There's all different facets of people who are really, they're in their house and not able to get out because they can't do the elevation, they can't do the steps, or they certainly can't do it safely. So the ADA is absolutely a benefit to people of those conditions.
All right, thank you.
The transportation part of the ADA Act states that transportation authorities must comply with requirements for accessibility in newly purchased vehicles, make efforts to purchase or lease accessible used buses, and remanufacture buses in an accessible manner. People with disabilities have the right to use a wheelchair or mobility. They have the right to travel with a personnel care attendant or a service animal if needed. They have the right to receive courteous, respectful service and ample time to get on and off the vehicle. They may also file a complaint if these rights are violated. Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, also known as IDEA or IDEA, was enacted by Congress in 1975. It gives children with disabilities the opportunity to receive a free, appropriate education, the least restrictive environment, and a guarantee of due process and safeguards. It requires public schools to create an individualized education program, also known as IEP. Special education and related services are provided to all children and youth in the U.S. with disabilities from birth through age 21.
My name is Sue Brown and I'm a physical therapist.
What area of the Americans with Disability Acts do you deal with?
I'm a physical therapist employed by a school district, so I'm involved with the Individual with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, and in Minnesota, special education includes birth to 21.
What is the purpose of it?
Our job in education is to make sure children with disabilities have the opportunity to receive a free, appropriate public education just like other children. I work in the early childhood special ed, which is birth to 5 population.
How does your job relate to IDEA?
Physical therapy is a related service in special education, which recognizes that limitations in mobility and/or gross motor skills can significantly impact a child's education. I'm part of the education team which determines if a child is eligible for services, and then together with the family determines how to best provide those services in the least restrictive environment and how to address the needs through the individual education plan, or IEP.
What methods do you use to provide the kids with equal education?
For my job, it's the most important is in their natural environment. So my birth to 3 kids are mostly seen at home with their family or caregiver, or sometimes in a daycare setting. And a big part of my job is to teach the family how to help their child so that it becomes a part of their natural daily routine, not just the 1 hour that I'm there. In the 3 to 5 population, those kids are seen in a typical preschool setting, just like other kids in that age group. Another part of my job is I assist families with helping their children learn to move both on the floor and getting upright onto their feet. I can also assist the family with accommodations or modifications that their child may need, such as adapted equipment, walkers, wheelchairs, braces, etc. As the kids grow older, the role of the physical therapist in the education setting changes into dealing more with the classroom staff rather than families. And at the other end of their education, up into the 18 to 21-year-olds, the physical therapist helps with future education, employment, community living, rec and leisure activities.
If the disabilities movement had not occurred, how do you think America would be different?
There would be many, many more institutions where people with disabilities were all living together. We wouldn't have programs like the Special Olympics or the Paralympics, and America would miss out on the potential of an entire population just because they weren't given an opportunity.
Thank you for your time.
My name is Megan Pomerlo. I work at Zanewood Community School and the Special Ed Setting 3 DCD classroom.
What area of the Disability Act do you deal with?
The part of the movement that I deal with is the Individual with Disabilities Education Act, which is also IDEA.
What teaching methods do you use?
We have in our classroom IEPs, the Individual Education Plan, which is an individual plan for each of the students that are in my classroom, which is 7, and they each have different education plans and things that they are working on. So we use the day to work on the kids one-on-one with the different things that they're working on personally, and we also do some things with two-on-ones and stuff like that.
How are the tools in school equipped for the disabled kids?
A couple of things that we use in our classroom, we have adapted scissors. So the kids that are in wheelchairs or kids that don't have mobility of their hands, it's a table scissors, and you are able to use that with them. We also have switches that we use. We record our voices for the kids that don't have voices and are not able to talk, they're nonverbal, and we will record like a book on it and do our morning meeting stuff with it so that they're able to push the button. So for instance, if we ask what today is, the button might say Wednesday, and they would push it and they'd be able to kind of have a voice in the meeting. We also have adapted mouses so that they can use the computers. It's a mouse that is just one button, it's a ball, and they're able to place their hand on it and use that. We also have a book flipper, and we record a book on to the flipper, and they are able to push a button and it flips the pages and reads the book to them.
How do you ensure that kids with disabilities have the same educational opportunities?
With our kids, we get them to their mainstream classrooms, so we have 7 different grade levels, and we have 4 staff in the classroom, and throughout the day, the kids are able to go into their classrooms and be with their regular ed classes so that they can be there for social studies or afternoon meeting, and that just gets them out into the school and into their classes so that they're with kids their grade level.
How have the changes been made from the past to make the disabled more able to do what other kids have the chance to do?
I would say one of the biggest things is the improvements with the equipment that they have. We have walkers that give our kids an opportunity to walk in the hallways when they're usually in their wheelchairs. And the regular ed kids love to see them being able to use their feet when they usually don't. And just like the computer mouse that we have usually wouldn't be something that they have and they have now. And even the table scissors, that's a new thing that we have this year. We are constantly getting information on different equipment that is coming out for kids with disabilities.
What do you think the world would be like if the Disabilities Act had not passed?
I think that if it hadn't passed, it wouldn't have been able to give the opportunity to the children to progress and to advance to what they are. There's lots of jobs out there that we try to teach our kids how to do in the classroom, even like going around the school, and they recycle for the school. They crush cans and do that kind of stuff for them. So I think that that's one of the things that is important, that it is giving these kids an opportunity to be able to one day be out in the community, maybe on their own or with helpers, and do more than they wouldn't have been able to do had it not passed.
Thank you for your time.
The disability movement has given the disabled a chance to live independently, and it continues to open up more opportunities for the people to experience things in life that they would not have gotten in the past. Every day brings new advanced equipment that helps the disabled more able to do what other kids can do.